tutorial. Today I'm going to be experimenting with sunsets. Should be able to get a lot of different paintings in today, hopefully a few videos made, and a few questions that I've had that I want to experiment with and see if I can answer. So yesterday I took a series of photos while leaving the weight room, and for the most part, they're very the same concept. Darkening blue sky, we have the sunset, thin strip of the vibrance, and then the dark, the kind of silhouette of the landscape, whether it was trees or houses or what have you, telephone poles and whatnot. So it got me thinking, and when I look at those things, I always think of tonalism, and that's kind of the school of art that I'm kind of following. So I thought I'd bring up some photos. Nope, that's the wrong thing. Of course, I want to have it all set up. Why is this on Twitch? Not the best at these things. Let's see. Here we go. Silk browser. So I just Googled tonalist sunset, and you can see in general that we have like a silhouette in a lot of these. We have a vibrant sunset. The sunsets, for the most part, you kind of have the color scheme and ideas. So that's what I wanted to attempt. A lot of these are in oils, and I wanted to see what was possible with watercolor. Let me figure out if I can go back to, that would be Amazon Photos. Yes, it would. Okay. So I wanted to see what was possible with watercolor with this concept. And I wanted to see the vibrancy of that yellowish orange, if I can get it to take place and if I can still get the perspective to work. So that's my goal and question, and I might take different approaches. Do I do the wet and wet? Do I do it dry? Do I paint it in, then go back after everything dries and then put in another layer? That's something that I never do, where I'll touch the sky once in the beginning in the wet and wet, and I'll then you never touch it again. And then there's also the concept of the tonal values, where I might be thinking put in vibrant color, but maybe the answer is the surrounding colors affect the vibrancy of that, where it's not so much me putting an excessive amount of orange. It might be just emphasizing the clouds above and the silhouettes below. So there's a lot of different approaches I could potentially take with this one. And then I talk about Carlson's guide to landscape painting and his theory of angles, and I figured I would kind of draw out what I've been talking about. So we have the light source. I'm going to do LS, light source. Usually we have it coming down. Brightest area will have the plane, and then we have our perpendiculars, our trees, which will be darkest, right? Now in this one, I'm going to do that for the sky. Our light source is coming from the back, so this is if we were standing 90 degrees to the way the picture was taken. Light source is coming behind these trees. The ground is not catching a great amount of light, so the ground's going to be very dark. This side of the tree is going to be super dark. SD, super dark. And then we have our light source in the back. So we're backlit, dark ground, super dark tree right there. So value-wise, that's the way I probably have to approach it. So a couple ideas, and we'll see how far I take them today. We have our piece of Stonehenge Aqua. Sorry if that beginning it was long, probably about 5 minutes. So this is the point you probably want to skip to. or you could skip past me wetting the paper as well. So I have my 11 by 15 Stonehenge Aqua. I'm going to start with my normal approach, wetting everything. And here, we could use the raw sienna, but I figure I would play with quinacridone gold. Put a little bit on that on the palette. And I'm thinking really lay it in there. Now I don't want to trace it all the way across, or at least want some variation within it to make it interesting. So I have some heavy pigment loads in some areas. This is one thing I was thinking about. Do we have that variation in there? Let's see what can take place. By the way, this is Daniel Smith quinacridone. I'm going to place an order for more paints and paper soon. By the way, if you're ever interested in supporting the cost of those things, I have a Patreon link below. I think I might actually see if I can figure out how to put a link for PayPal donations if you guys want to ever send anything my way for these things. But I want to order more quinacridone gold. It's a pretty unique color. It makes a beautiful triad with indigo and brown madder. And that's what we're going to put in there. Okay, so I'm going to wash this off. I don't usually use it that often, so I'm not really sure how it's going to interact with the ultramarine. So I know that's kind of a little naive of me, not having that mixture known. I'm going to mix it with some alizarin to brown it out. Not brown it out, purple it out. And I could add some burnt umber for a little bit of gray. Okay, so I'm now going to gradiate this up so you can see that green is kind of taking place. So they do result in a green mixture. Unlike the skies with a raw sienna and ultramarine, where you don't really get too much green taking place. Okay, let me strengthen this for the top. So it's a little contrary to what I've been experimenting with lately, with the sky being the light source, and trying to keep just see how light I could get the sky. In this case, I'm going for super darker ones, and mix it even darker for the clouds in the picture. So I'm picking up that Quin Gold underneath, and I'm getting that greenish cast to it. I did not want that to take place. So in a future experiment, I'll have to let that darken, dry first. So I'm going to go darker. I'm going to pull in some Payne's Gray into this mixture to see if we can overpower that. All right, flatten everything. Now, I talked about how our ground is going to have to be dark because it's not well lit due to the angle of the light source. I think I'm going to do some dry brush for some variety in the foreground. And I seem to have neglected this area right here. It is not a brilliant light source. This is looking like right now. Okay. So let me dry it off. Okay. So, first impressions as the first wet and wet and our underpainting. Referring back to the original picture, I might need to give it a moment for it to focus. I can see we had that greenish issue with the two mixing together. I may actually have to do a second layer in the sky. So let's experiment with that. And then when we come down, we'll look at the darks for the horizon. So let me clean off my work area. Next time, I think that I would benefit with this composition in regards to benefit if I used some cerulean blue, especially in that area. So I'm gonna gradiate down with a wash. Okay. Now I want my dark mauvish, purplish gray. I'm just gonna use Payne's gray, burnt umber, marine, get that dark. Now I'm feeding into some wet and wet areas. But I don't really think I would have that many hard edges in the sky, so I think what I'm suffering from and dealing with is the transparency issues of watercolor in regards to this. Not so much suffering, but that's what I'm battling against and getting the colors that I'm not quite wanting, or at least the effects. Let's do another dry off and put in that tree line. There's some wet and wet there, so I'm going to leave that just for a little experimenting, seeing what takes place, just so I don't get just a stark silhouette. But now I'm going to use, I really need to learn how to pronounce it, Indanthrowren. Indanthrowren. Some people call it Indy Blue. I just can't pronounce it. But I've been seeing Posey Gaines use this a lot to get his darks, which I think is fun. You could get your darks any way you want. I would use phthalo blue and the burnt umber. Here I'm using the Indy Blue and that to get that. You could use Payne's gray, you could use black, whatever you're trying to achieve. Now here, I have a tree line that I'm going wet and wet with. So hopefully, wet and wet, dried brush, half and half. So it's not completely dried off. And I figured that this would give us interesting variation that laying in, rather than just a stark black silhouette. So I'm going to talk about dry brushing in the foreground. Now let's see. Let's add a little variation while I think. So far, the one swipe or the initial wet and wet of the Quinn Gold worked for me, where it seems like it is receding and staying in the background. A lot of issues putting the clouds over it, where I was just getting that transparency. So I'm thinking the answer to that would have been putting in wet and wet like this, holding the brush so I didn't let it spread out as much. So that's one thing I'm seeing so far. The other thing that I'm seeing is that even through the Indie Blue and the Burnt Umber, I'm getting that to show through. And I had thought about using Yellow Ochre, which is quite opaque, and I think I have a CAD yellow, which may have worked because it's the Cotman brand, so it's the U and not as pigmented. It might have sat back as well, and I could have potentially used CAD red, but I think something is just kind of telling me that I've tried that in the past and it just pushed too far forward, because of the opacity of it. So that's the one thing. The next thing is I am having issues with that wet and wet the second time around. So I think personally for my style, I need to achieve that the first go. Second, another issue that I'm seeing is that having these darks back here, I may need a super, super dark in the foreground or the same dark to help achieve a more perspective rather than having a flat. So maybe the foreground marks helped with that, but it's being so dark, that stuff would have really been hidden, especially, I guess, in a tonalist painting. So just put a tree in the front, a really dark one, and we'll see how that helps the mid-ground sit. Personally, I'm not too pleased so far with this painting, but I feel like I did answer a lot of the personal questions that I had. I had wanted to do this so bad last night, but yesterday was back day, my back day in the weight room, and I hit a personal best. I deadlifted 424 for 5 reps. I was really happy with that. My main goal is to hit, a 500-pound deadlift. In 2 weeks, I might attempt that. But a few months later, like, I guess it would have been a strain, like my hip and or across the lower left side, like the lumbar. So the hip and lumbar was like, oh my God, it was just hurting so bad. So I made my way through the rest of my workout and hobbled home, and did not sleep that good last night. Had to go kind of straight into the bathtub and try to soak my back and my hip. And My fiance took one look and she saw like how swollen my hip was. So I wasn't able to paint last night. I'm still hurting today, but I think it's because I had a really heavy, well, high rep squat day on Monday, and my hips are probably still tight from that. Something was probably still tight. All right, now I'm just using the darks and kind of using the concept from yesterday's video of how the thinner, what was it? The thinner darks probably won't be as dark as the main trunk. This is due to the light enveloping it. We could have that light envelop on the side, slightly lighter there. And I think this right here is helping establish more of a perspective. Just not happy with that. Not to be a complainer. But, you know, the thing is, with watercolor, you wind up amassing so many paintings that it's fine to have ones that you're not happy with, or some that so somebody else might like it. You definitely want to experiment with some stuff that I could ramble about while I'm doing this. So somebody on the Ron Ranson Disciples, that's the one that I post on a lot. I really like to follow that group. It's a really friendly group. Great advice. We have a lot of people on there that do video tutorials. That's where I saw Posey Gaines, and that's where the Indothron. He also uses Quinn Gold. I'm not sure what brand he does, because I think I have 2 sets of the Quinn Gold. One from the Da Vinci brand, and one from who's the other one? Yeah, Daniel Smith. So I'm not sure which one he uses. I don't really research too much the higher level professional grade watercolors, because I don't think it shows up in the kind of student grade, the Cotman colors and the Van Gogh brand, which are good brands. That's what I use if I'm not using the professional grade Vinci or whatnot. It's just that a lot of those other brands start going out of my price affordability. But for people that paint very seriously, and when I mean seriously, I mean very meticulous, where it's looking lifelike and whatnot, I think that's the way to go. But for fast and loose and experimenting, the brands that I mentioned are perfectly fine. There's just limitations on what is there. I think this is actually working out pretty good, where it's pushing back the tree line and helping push back that skyline even more. I'm kind of just tickling it right now, playing and talking. I lost my, there it is. I am thinking about potentially going in and adding some, like remember how I said at the beginning that I could at the end go back and add to the skyline. I may or may not do that. In the oil painting videos I watch, I've seen that happen a lot. I just really want to achieve a dark in that foreground. I think after this one I'll take a hot bath, soak my hip, let it loosen up some more. Just have a nice lazy Saturday. You can fiddle with this as much as you want. Of course, feel free to follow along with any of these, experiment with these compositions, play around with it. Color-wise, if you don't have some of the colors I used, in this one, I used the Quin Gold. You can utilize raw sienna, ultramarine, not ultramarine. What's the other one that I mentioned? Yellow ochre. You could try that out, but yellow ochre is more opaque, so that'd be an experiment for y'all to try. If you have that on your palette, see how it works with the sky. If it helps, if it pushes it too far forward or what. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that can get it to sit back there. I just I don't think that's in my skill set yet. You could also try lemon yellow. You'll have the greens take place in the sky like I was having if you go that route. What else can you use? Lemon yellow, cad yellow. Experiment with a cad red. You know, like I was genuinely concerned, like I had said, that a cad red would push very far forward, but you can give that a try as well. I have the Indithron blue that I've been using for the mix of the super darks. I had mentioned earlier you can use phthalo blue instead. You know, try black, try some of the other ones with it, see what happens. I think I only used burnt umber for my brown, so this was pretty limited palette painting. I think most people at this point have burnt umber on their palette. If you don't, you could try burnt sienna with that. Burnt sienna mixes interestingly with ultramarine. Ultramarine is another one that I think almost everybody has. I talked about how you could have done cerulean blue in areas of the sky. So that's another possibility as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wet this Let's see if I can remove that hard edge. Okay, no, kind of worked. A little bit playing around with the sky at the end. Definitely a first for me right there. What else can you do? So I think I gave you a lot of options, things for you guys to experiment with, things to put into your, potentially put into your bag of tricks, see what happens. I'm happier with this now that I have that foreground in there. And I was getting a little, a kind of Cajun term is boudet, when you're kind of down and out. But I think this is interesting. Let's just for the fun of it, get some pure black on there, and we'll see how that dries. Black is just going to have such a huge drying shift take place within watercolor, so be wary of that, just like the Payne's gray color shift or the value shift. Let's get some last bit of that Quinn Gold. Just an experiment. Would that work in here? Would it catch the edges of the leaves? Let me know what you guys think. Was the Quinn Gold at the end in the trees making it interesting? I don't think I like it down here though. Now we need to dry it off. We'll put a mat over it. Like I said, hope you enjoyed. I have a whole bunch of links down at the bottom. Feel free to like, subscribe, check out my other paintings. Check out my Instagram. Feel free if you want to send anything this way through PayPal or Patreon, and, support the arts. But most importantly, just take out your brush and start painting. Let's try this. All right, looks like we're pretty dry. Here's our mat. I'm not sure what time we're at with the video. Probably about a 40-minute video, I think. We will switch this up on an angle for y'all to see, and then I'll take a photo of it and try to put it at the beginning of this. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed. I hope encouraged y'all to experiment and try some different things and think about perspective what can you do? What can we do in order to push things back and pull other things forward? I'm Andrew Broussard. Hope you enjoyed. Have a great day.